The Badlands of Hell Creek, Montana, are a graveyard of giants. In the summer of 1902, Barnum Brown, a man known as Mr. Bones for his uncanny ability to sniff out fossils, stood over a discovery that would change natural history forever. He had found a predator so massive, so terrifying in its proportions, that it demanded a name of supreme authority. Henry Fairfield Osborn would later dub it Tyrannosaurus rex, the Tyrant Lizard King. For decades, the T-Rex sat unchallenged on the throne. It was the gold standard of prehistoric power, a 12-ton engine of destruction with a bite force capable of shattering bone into powder. To the public, it wasn't just a dinosaur, it was the ultimate biological limit of what a land predator could be. But as the 20th century progressed, whispers of other kings began to emerge from the shifting sands of different continents. The monopoly of the T-Rex was about to be challenged. The first hint of a true rival came from the Sahara Desert. In 1912, German paleontologist Ernst Stromer discovered the remains of a creature that defied logic. It had long, slender jaws like a crocodile and a towering sail of bone protruding from its spine. He named it Spinosaurus aegypticus. Stromer's fossils suggested a creature longer than any T-Rex ever found. However, tragedy struck during World War II when an Allied bombing raid destroyed the Munich museum housing these precious bones. Spinosaurus became a ghost, a legend documented only in Stromer's sketches, leaving the crown briefly back in the hands of the King of Montana. Then came the 1990s, the decade of the giants. In the arid plains of Patagonia, Argentina, a local fossil hunter named Ruben Carolini stumbled upon a tibia sticking out of the ground. What he unearthed was Giganotosaurus carolini. It was a sleek, terrifying hunter that lived millions of years before the T-Rex and appeared to surpass it in length. This wasn't a lone outlier. South America was seemingly home to a whole dynasty of Carcharodontosaurids, shark-toothed lizards that reached gargantuan proportions. Suddenly, the leaderboard was crowded. We were no longer looking at a single monarch, but a global assembly of titans. In North America, we had the robust, heavily armored T-Rex. In Africa, the mysterious, sail-backed Spinosaurus. In South America, the razor-toothed Gigantosaurus. Each of these animals pushed the boundaries of vertebrate biology to the absolute breaking point. The central question of our story begins here. How do we actually measure greatness? Is it the length from snout to tail? Is it the height at the hip? Or is it the sheer crushing weight of the animal? As we look at these three contenders, we realize that size is a deceptive word. One was a specialized swimmer, one was a long-distance pursuit hunter, and one was a heavy-set brawler. To find the largest theropod, we have to look past the skeletons and into the very physics of how these animals lived and breathed. The war for the crown isn't just fought with teeth and claws. It's fought with data, bone density, and the elusive fragments of fossils still buried deep in the earth. In the annals of paleontology, no creature has undergone a more radical transformation in our collective imagination than Spinosaurus. For nearly a century, it was depicted as a generic T-Rex with a sail, a bipedal monster that stalked the North African floodplains. But as we dig deeper into the Spinosaurus enigma, we find a story of tragic loss, scientific detective work, and a creature that seems to break every rule of dinosaur biology. The mystery begins with Ernst Stromer's lost fossils. When the Munich Museum was reduced to rubble in 1944, the only physical evidence of Spinosaurus vanished. For decades, scientists had to rely on Stromer's hand-drawn plates. It wasn't until the 21st century that new remains began to emerge from the Kem beds of Morocco, and what they revealed was nothing short of a biological revolution. The enigma of Spinosaurus lies in its proportions. While other giant theropods like Giganotosaurus followed a standard theropod blueprint, long legs for running and a heavy head for crushing bone, Spinosaurus looked like a creature assembled from spare parts. Its skull was long and narrow, resembling a gharial's, lined with conical teeth designed for gripping slippery fish rather than shearing through bone. Its nostrils were retracted high up on the snout, allowing it to breathe while partially submerged. But the real controversy erupted when paleontologist Nizar Ibrahim and his team unveiled a new skeleton in 2014. The legs were shockingly short, so short that they seemed incapable of supporting a 50-foot-long animal on land. This sparked a heated debate. Was Spinosaurus a quadruped, walking on its knuckles? Or was it the first truly semi-aquatic dinosaur? The puzzle pieces shifted again in 2020 with the discovery of its tail. Unlike its stiff counterbalancing tails of its cousins, the Spinosaurus had a broad paddle-like tail, supported by tall neural spines. This was an engine for swimming. It suggested that Spinosaurus wasn't just wading in the shallows, it was an active hunter in the massive river systems of the Cretaceous River of Giants. This brings us to the size war dilemma. On paper, Spinosaurus is the longest theropod to ever walk the Earth, with some estimates stretching it to 59 feet. In a world where length is the only metric, it wears the crown. However, the enigma deepens when we look at mass. Because it was so specialized for the water, its body was elongated and slender. Its bones were dense, pachystotic, to act as ballast for diving, much like a penguin or a hippopotamus. Despite being nearly 15 feet longer than a T-Rex, most modern volumetric models suggest Spinosaurus weighed significantly less, perhaps topping out at 7 or 8 tons, whereas a large T-Rex could push 10 to 12 tons. This forces us to ask, is the largest dinosaur the one that spans the furthest distance, or the one that displaces the most weight? The Spinosaurus remains an enigma because it challenges our definition of a theropod. It was a specialist in a world of generalists, a river monster that haunted a lush, dangerous Sahara. It proved that evolution wasn't just trying to build a bigger killer, it was trying to conquer an entirely different element. As we transition to Chapter 3, we leave the water behind to look at the animal that perfected the art of being a terrestrial titan, the king itself.
In the world of paleontology, size is often a game of smoke and mirrors. If you measure by length, Spinosaurus is the victor. If you measure by height, the long-legged Giganotosaurus makes a compelling case. But in the cold, hard world of biology and physics, the true measure of a giant is mass. And when it comes to sheer, concentrated weight, Tyrannosaurus rex is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. For over a century, T-Rex was the benchmark, but as longer theropods were discovered, some claimed the king had been dethroned. However, the last decade of research has seen a massive re-crowning of the Tyrant King. The secret lies in its bulk. While other large theropods were built like sleek aerodynamic sprinters, the T-Rex was built like a heavy-duty tank. It possessed a barrel-chested torso, a massive rib cage, and a neck so thick with muscle it could support a skull weighing over 1,000 pounds. The turning point in this debate came with a specimen named Scotty. Found in Saskatchewan, Canada, Scotty isn't just long, stretching roughly 42 feet, it is incredibly robust. By using 3D laser scanning and volumetric modeling, scientists can now wrap digital flesh around these bones. The results were staggering. While a large Giganotosaurus might weigh in at 8 or 9 tons, Scotty and another famous specimen, Sue, are estimated to have tipped the scales at over 10 tons, with some models even suggesting 11 or 12. But why was the king so much thicker than its rivals? The answer is specialization. T-Rex wasn't just a scavenger or a simple hunter, it was a bone crusher. To deliver a bite force of 8,000 to 12,000 pounds, enough to explode the pelvis of a triceratops, the animal needed a massive internal frame to anchor those muscles and absorb the equal and opposite reaction of its own bite. If a Giganotosaurus tried to bite with that much force, its own skull might have shattered. The T-Rex was a biological masterpiece of over-engineering. Furthermore, the king had a secret weapon in its bones. In the world of paleontology, size is often a game of smoke and mirrors. If you measure by length, Spinosaurus is the victor. If you measure by height, the long-legged Giganotosaurus makes a compelling case. But in the cold, hard world of biology and physics, the true measure of a giant is mass. And when it comes to sheer, concentrated weight, Tyrannosaurus rex is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. For over a century, T-Rex was the benchmark, but as longer theropods were discovered, some claimed the king had been dethroned. However, the last decade of research has seen a massive re-crowning of the Tyrant King. The secret lies in its bulk. While other large theropods were built like sleek aerodynamic sprinters, the T-Rex was built like a heavy-duty tank. It possessed a barrel-chested torso, a massive rib cage, and a neck so thick with muscle it could support a skull weighing over 1,000 pounds. The turning point in this debate came with a specimen named Scotty. Found in Saskatchewan, Canada, Scotty isn't just long, stretching roughly 42 feet, it is incredibly robust. By using 3D laser scanning and volumetric modeling, scientists can now wrap digital flesh around these bones. The results were staggering. While a large Giganotosaurus might weigh in at 8 or 9 tons, Scotty and another famous specimen, Sue, are estimated to have tipped the scales at over 10 tons, with some models even suggesting 11 or 12. But why was the king so much thicker than its rivals? The answer is specialization. T-Rex wasn't just a scavenger or a simple hunter, it was a bone crusher. To deliver a bite force of 8,000 to 12,000 pounds, enough to explode the pelvis of a triceratops, the animal needed a massive internal frame to anchor those muscles and absorb the equal and opposite reaction of its own bite. If a Giganotosaurus tried to bite with that much force, its own skull might have shattered. The T-Rex was a biological masterpiece of over-engineering. Furthermore, the king had a secret weapon in its bones. CT scans of T-Rex skeletons reveal that while their bones were bird-like in their air sac systems to keep them light enough to move, the weight was distributed in a way that lowered their center of gravity. This made them surprisingly agile for their size. while Spinosaurus was becoming a specialist of the water, and the giants of South America were specializing in hunting long-necked sauropods. T-Rex was evolving to be the ultimate generalist predator. It had the binocular vision of a hawk, the sense of smell of a bloodhound, and the weight of a semi-truck. When we compare T-Rex to the rest of the world, we see a divide between length and power. A T-Rex may be shorter than a Spinosaurus, but it is nearly double the thickness. It's the difference between a long, elegant fencing foil and a heavy, weighted sledgehammer. In the record books of the Cretaceous, the hammer always wins. As we move further, we'll look at the ghost giants, the mysterious contenders who left behind just enough bone to make us wonder if there's a secret challenger still waiting to be fully unearthed.
In the shadows of the well-documented titans like T-Rex and Spinosaurus lie the ghost giants, the phantoms of the fossil record that keep paleontologists awake at night. These are the predators known only from a handful of teeth, a single jawbone, or a weathered fragment of a skull. They are the tantalizing what-ifs of prehistory, suggesting that the true largest theropod might still be encased in stone, waiting for a lucky discovery to rewrite the record books. The story of the ghost giants begins with the realization that the fossil record is incredibly biased. Only a tiny fraction of animals that ever lived were preserved, an even smaller fraction have been found. This leaves us with giants like Carcharodontosaurus, the shark-toothed lizard of North Africa. When Ernst Stromer first described it alongside Spinosaurus, he knew it was massive. But like Spinosaurus, the original fossils were vaporized in the firestorms of World War II. Modern finds have confirmed its status as a behemoth, with skulls measuring over 5 feet in length. It was a sleek, terrifying predator that likely rivaled Giganotosaurus in size, yet we lack the complete skeletons needed to crown it with certainty. Then there is Mapusaurus. Found in a massive bone bed in Argentina, this find suggested something even more terrifying than a lone giant, a pack of them. By analyzing the largest individual bones in the heap, researchers realized they were dealing with an animal that potentially exceeded Giganotosaurus in mass. These earth lizards were specialized sauropod hunters, evolved specifically to take down the largest land animals to ever live. If you're a predator that eats 80-ton longnecks for breakfast, you have to be gargantuan. But the most haunting of the ghosts is Oxalaia. Known only from 2 fragments of a snout found in Brazil, this relative of Spinosaurus hints at a South American twin that may have been even larger than its African cousin. Because we only have the tip of the nose, we have to use mathematical scaling to guess the rest of its body. If the proportions follow the Spinosaurus blueprint, Oxalaia could have been the true length record holder. But without a spine, a tail, or a femur, it remains a shadow, a ghost in the machine of evolution. We also have to consider the fragmentary giants of the early Cretaceous, like Syots micarum from North America or the mysterious Delta dromeus. These animals appear in the fossil record just long enough to show us that T-Rex wasn't the first giant to claim the continent. The ghost giants represent the known unknowns. They remind us that our current charts, where T-Rex or Spinosaurus sit at the top, are only based on the pieces of the puzzle we've managed to find. In the vast, unexplored stretches of the Gobi Desert, the Saharan sands, and the Patagonian cliffs, there are almost certainly theropods that would make our current heavyweights look like middleweights. These ghosts haunt our classifications, proving that the title of the largest is a moving target, held only until the next shovel hits the dirt. As we move into our final chapter, we must step away from specific names and look at the limits of biology. How big can a meat-eater actually get before its own bones crush under its weight?
As we reach the conclusion of our journey through the Titans, we must move beyond the names and the rivalries to ask a fundamental question. Why aren't theropods the size of blue whales? Why did the arms race of the Cretaceous period seem to hit a ceiling at around 10 to 12 tons? This is where the story of the largest theropod meets the uncompromising laws of physics and the harsh reality of the limits of biology. Nature is not a fan of infinite growth. Every animal is a prisoner of the square-cube law. This mathematical principle dictates that if you double the height of a dinosaur, you don't just double its weight, you cube it. A T-Rex that is twice as tall would be 8 times as heavy, but its leg bones would only be 4 times as strong. Eventually, a land predator reaches a point where its skeleton can no longer support its mass, or its muscles can no longer move its limbs with the speed required to hunt. This mechanical wall is why we see a cluster of different species, T-Rex, Giganotosaurus, and Carcharodontosaurus, all topping out at a similar weight class. They were all flirting with the structural limits of calcium and collagen. Then there is the metabolic tax. Being a giant meat-eater is an expensive lifestyle. A 10-ton carnivore requires a staggering amount of calories just to stay alive, let alone to hunt and reproduce. Unlike the long-necked sauropods, which could stand in one place and vacuum up forests of low-quality vegetation, a theropod had to be active. It had to track, strike, and kill. If a predator grows too large, it becomes too slow to catch prey. If it becomes too slow, it starves. The largest theropods were likely balanced on a knife's edge between maximum power and minimum efficiency. We also have to consider the environment. To support a 15-ton predator, an ecosystem needs an almost bottomless supply of prey. In the River of Giants where Spinosaurus lived, or the Hell Creek of the T-Rex, the abundance of life was incredible. But even the richest environments have a carrying capacity. Evolution won't produce a 20-ton theropod if there isn't enough meat on the landscape to fuel its growth. So, who is the winner? If we define largest by mass and volume, the standard biological measure for biggest, the crown currently remains with Tyrannosaurus rex. Its bone density and robust architecture allowed it to pack more animal into a smaller frame than its rivals. However, if we define largest by sheer length and reach, the aquatic specialist Spinosaurus glides into the top spot. But perhaps the most exciting conclusion is that the title is temporary. We are currently living in a golden age of paleontology, with a new species of dinosaur being discovered roughly every 2 weeks. Somewhere in the deep strata of the earth, a femur is waiting to be found, a bone larger than Scotty's, longer than the Spinosaurs, and thicker than anything we've imagined. The story of the largest theropod isn't just about a record in a book. It's a testament to the incredible plasticity of life. It shows us how far nature can push the boundaries of flesh and bone before the laws of the universe say no more. Until that next discovery, we look at the skeletons of the king, the sailback,
and the ghost giants with a mix of awe and humility, knowing that we are just beginning to understand the true scale of the monsters that once ruled our world.